First question of the night, and that's to Andrew Wilkie. What do you think would be the most effective, tangible reform that we can have a crack at doing? Would it be mandatory pre-commitment, or would it be a blanket bet limit to make machines more benign?
I fully support the Productivity Commission recommendations. Now, to explain, the Productivity Commission is no bleeding heart organisation. It is a highly regarded federal organisation. It did an inquiry into the problem in gambling in 1999, and then in 2009, at the direction of then Prime Minister Kevin Rudd, it started a second inquiry, went for 18 months, received over 400 submissions, held a number of roundtables, meetings, all sorts of things. In essence, it had close to 500 pieces of evidence over 18 months, and in mid-2010 it brought out its report. It's 2 volumes, it's about this thick. It is undoubtedly the most important inquiry into problem gambling in the country's history, and it provides the blueprint. Everything I have campaigned for at the national level has been consistent with that blueprint. And I think, you know, this government, one day maybe a government will pick it up and implement it. There are numerous recommendations in that. The 2 key recommendations are that $1 maximum bets be implemented straight away without trial. $1 maximum bets implemented straight away without trial, and mandatory pre-commitment to be laid over the top of that after a trial, plus a number of other reforms. And I think that's a pretty good blueprint. That to me, short of prohibition, is the sort of way to go. So that's where I put my confidence in the Productivity Commission. And I just want to make it quite clear here, I fully support the Greens campaign on $1 maximum bets. It was my original position. And look, I made a joke before about being independent, not mixing with parties. On this issue, the Greens do stand proud. And I think Kim Booth in particular, at the state level, has done a wonderful job. And, you know, being a state, isolated state with a modest number of poker machines, you know, this state can lead the country, with the exception of Western Australia, of course, which only has pokies in the casino. There's no reason why this state can't be a national leader in poker machine reform.
True. Helen Burnet wants to go next.
Thanks. I have a letter. I did invite a number of people, and I should acknowledge my automatic colleagues, so Phil Cocker, Bill Harvey and Eva Rizika, and also my former automatic colleague, but now MLC, Rob Valentine, who's here tonight. But I did invite Richard Di Natale, who is the Greens federal spokesperson, and he's actually written a letter, so if I can just read that out to put that position. So, hi Helen, thanks for organising this tonight. No doubt you will hear tonight the enormous social harms that poker machines cause in our community. It's no wonder there's a groundswell of support for doing something about the problem. I believe that we still have an opportunity to get meaningful reform through the Parliament. The end game of any reform has to change one thing: what happens when you sit down in front of a poker machine. In a few years' time, will the pokies be the same rapacious machines that can take over $1,000 from you in a single hour? Or will there be something standing in between to limit those losses? The Greens and Senator Xenophon don't support the government's proposed pokies bill because it doesn't achieve this aim. We worry that it's worse than nothing because it gives the veneer, so it's obviously a different perspective from Andrew's. It gives a veneer of action but only serves to take the issue off the political agenda for years to come. I believe the minority parliament still provides the opportunity to pass meaningful pokies legislation. The Greens will take this opportunity to continue to push for reform with teeth. At the very least, all new machines should not only be capable of supporting mandatory pre-commitment but should also support $1 bet limits. With the support of people such as those attending this forum, I remain hopeful that the government will go further than the legislation they're proposing currently and so help reduce the losses. Richard Di Natale.
Thanks very much, Helen. Stephen, I don't know, I get the mic to would have, and I hope you don't mind me asking this, would a $1 bet limit lessen the impact that poker machines had on your life? I think most people do. That would be a fair thing to say, that most people do play about a dollar.
Yeah,
just playing devil's advocate, do you think it would make a big difference?
I think it'll make a difference, but I don't know as to how much. Look, I don't sit down and think about things like that, because as you saw, I'm consuming with the emotional side of it. But I am totally for the abolishment. I support anything that moves towards that, but I'm afraid it's not enough.
Is that the point?
Not enough.
Is that the point, Kim Booth? Do you think that it would be a really positive first step, but no one sees it as a silver bullet?
Yeah, look, I totally agree with Steve there with regard to the effect of the $1 bet limit. I mean, I'm a little bit more optimistic, having had a look at the Productivity Commission's recommendations, and as Andrew's pointed out, that is for both not only pre-commitment but also a $1 bet limit, as well as some changes to the spin rates, volatility, and other venue changes to prevent people getting hypnotised as they do at the moment. The Greens' position is unashamedly that we want to actually rid the state of poker machines right through the pubs and clubs and the casinos, as I've said, and that's as a result of submissions from the agency groups who deal with these issues. It is a baby step, you're right in that regard, but it's something that is before the Parliament at the moment. It is something that I think is achievable. And, you know, in politics sometimes, as Andrew's found here, I mean, he had an agreement there that would have brought in a national pre-commitment, a mandatory pre-commitment that's now been broken with the Prime Minister by them walking away from it. And sometimes you've got to take what you can achieve in politics. It's a very, very slow, you know, tortuous game at times. And, you know, our position at the state level is that we knew that there was no way that we would be able to get support from Labor and Liberal to get rid of pokie machines, either out of pubs and clubs or out of casinos. So as far as we're concerned, this is a responsible baby step that'll get us, it'll be part of a step down, a small step I suppose, down a long journey to rid the state of the machines. But if it helps, if it helps a single family to lose less money, then I think it's something that we should be doing. But I do agree with Stephen that really we mustn't lose sight of the fact that these are very, very dangerous machines. They are more addictive than what they call the crack cocaine of the gaming industry for good reason. And they should have no part in a civilised society. Together we should be able to achieve that.
Thanks very much. I think now would be a good time to see if anyone out there has a question. There's a mic at the back of the room. I'm not sure whether anyone wants to be that formal or just yell out.
He does.
Gentleman over here.
So I've actually got two questions. I'll ask one now and one later if there's time. I was going to ask a question first to Steve. Have you ever had the chance to tell your story to the bastards behind this? Because one of the ways that bastards maintain their bastardry is by isolating themselves from the effects of what they're doing. And I wondered if you've ever had the chance to front any of the people who are driving this industry. For instance, when you appeared on Insight, there were spokespeople from the gaming and hotels industry, the clubs industry. Have you ever had the chance to tell them what you told us and see what their reaction was? And if so, did they, what was their reaction?
Well, literally I did, and probably about 9 months ago, one of the things I did, possibly in a childlike way, I sent an email to Federal Group and asked them to consider getting rid of EGMs in this state, and that if they did, they might be considered more of a patriarch. They might eventually make more money by getting rid of them. And I was blocked. Any emails after that bounced back. So, but I would like to say, and I'm going to say it in case I don't get the chance, the federal group, it must be remembered that those people are standing back and not answering for this. We talk about many things to do with this subject. I sort of, I'm sorry I lost it a bit before, but we talk about many things to do with this subject. we don't talk about the innocent people that are getting hurt, and we don't talk about, or we're quiet when we try and talk about the people who are making the profit, you know, and they don't answer for any of this. And I'm constantly thinking of ways to try and do that. And if I can, I'd like to be a loose cannon that can say things to them, but I have to do that without compromising and also be effective, and I'm just learning how to do that. I haven't got a lot of patience, but in working with people I'm getting a little bit more. But I tell you now, if it comes to me, if I get the power to make them see, I will. But I believe more so that we will make them see, not me. I can do things that can irritate them, but we can do things that will make them buckle, you know, and fall. We can convince them. I've convinced all you that poker machines are no good, and all your other influencers up till now have convinced you that poker machines are no good. But they don't want to hear that, so it's up to us to convince them. So it's hard, you know, it's really hard to keep that. Whenever I write to the Mercury, and I always talk about federal, they take out the word and put industry in there, and I just continually do it, and they continually take it out or chop it out. What do? You know, and I guess it's up to a subversive court maybe to look after those things, and that's really all I should say on that. So, anyway.
Very good. Anyone else with a question? Yes.
Yes, thank you. I have two questions. One relates to what Steve was just talking about, and I agree with Stephen. I think it's time we made the Farrell family accountable and brought them into the spotlight. And I'd like to hear from the panel how they might do that. And the other part I'd like a comment on is how we actually allow people to move away from the shame and guilt related to these and actually provide some support for them to come out and tell their stories. Because I think Stephen's come out, but I do think we need to go out with the communities where they're insidious and we find a way to say it's not your fault. And I'd like to hear from Hannah how we might make it acceptable for people to come and tell their stories to the community.
Quickly, Andrew Wilkie, first up.
My head's just too long.
No, I just thought we want to get through lots of questions.
Now, I would like to kick off there because the Parliamentary Committee is now doing an inquiry into the cause of problem gambling and what to do about it. It's a very wide-ranging inquiry. And just in the last few weeks, in hearings in Sydney, Melbourne and Canberra, we've heard from a number of witnesses who are actually drilling down into this point. You know, how do we help people more effectively? And one of the issues that's coming up is that we talk about problem gambling as though, you know, you have a problem, you know, you're at fault. We stigmatise it. I mean, fortunately, the discussion in the last couple of years has been a hot topic politically. People are now starting to talk about it, and it still has a lot of stigma and a lot of people want to hide it. What we really need is programs like the Beyond Blue program to say to people, to say to the community, it's not your fault. It's okay. There are lots of people like you. Come out of the shadows and talk about it, and we will help you. There is no reason to feel stigmatised. You know, you have been affected by a dangerous product. You have become addicted. It is not your fault. So that's, I think, a really important point. And maybe we should even stop talking about problem gambling, because that suggests people have a problem when, in fact, society has a problem. That we have seemingly unregulated, a dangerous machine out there. We have state and territory governments that almost without exception can't be trusted to keep people safe. We have an all-powerful rich industry that harvests $12 billion a year from poker machine losses, 40% of which is from problem gamblers, and which has the main political parties by the neck, as we've seen the way that the ALP rolled over with the agreement with me. But yet all this is in the face of the fact that poll after poll after poll show 2/3 of Australians want to see meaningful poker machine reform, and the industry and the main political parties, the industry and the main political parties are totally out of step with majority public opinion. And that those 95,000 problem gamblers out there with poker machines at the moment It is not their fault. They are the innocent victims. And I'll ever so quickly link to the second point about petrol. I'm actually a bit at odds maybe with the view here. I generally don't talk about individual operators, because at the end of the day, federal included is just doing what they're allowed to do. And ultimately the problem is a succession of bad governments and a succession of bad politicians making bad laws and doing bad deals and letting the Tasmanian community down. And if we want to change this, we need to get rid of bad governments and bad politicians and elect people who are going to do something about this and who aren't going to roll over the first time Clubs New South Wales says boo. And until we get some decent politicians in there with a bit of backbone, this problem will remain.
Thanks very much. Helen Burnet up next.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, apart from the fact that I do think that we need to really put the spotlight on federal hotels and how much money they're taking out of our local economy outside the state, with profits going from Pokies to their trusts and so forth. In answer to Philip's question, I do think that certainly from the forum of discussions this afternoon, we can make that change, and we as local government representatives need to be representing the people on the ground, but we need to be organised to be able to do that. So I think signing the petition, making sure that we can effect change by being much more organised in putting pressure on our governments to ensure that those profits are shared. They're shared in the community and they're not generating the harm that's coming out of poker machine addiction and the impact on the social harm. But there's a really strong economic argument here as well, and Greg James spoke about it before, and hopefully he'll touch on it a little later. But we're in Hobart, a small municipality, but we're losing $175,000 per day because of poker machines, and that's a lot for a local economy. Surely that would be better in small businesses going across the counter at the local shoe shop or wherever, but we need to be making sure that our open businesses are well supported, and at this point they're not because of the profits going to federal hotels.
Kim Booth.
Thank you. Look, I'm not sure, Philip, whether educating the Farrell family or the Packers is really high on my agenda. I think the best way to educate both of those families would be to actually get rid of poker machines right out of the community. And as part of that, of course, exposing, the pokey barracks for what they are is part of the campaign, I think. In fact, I think Greg Jones might have at one stage printed a bumper sticker that's something like Pokies are for parasites and losers. And that's pretty pressing, I think, to the current thing, because, these families are parasites. They know exactly what they're doing. They know full well what they're doing. They've heard the evidence. They've blocked Stephen's emails talking about it. They laugh at the children who haven't got anything to eat, when the food's been taken off the table by federal hotels or by Mullowa Holdings. These people who are addicted deliberately to pokies walk in the open door, they're called in, and they strip them of their week's wages and send them home with an empty wallet to a cold house with a family that might not even be there anymore. Now, if the Farrells can't understand that, then there's nothing I can do to help them other than by working through the political process to make sure that, if we get enough community pressure to support a $1 bet limit, which currently that legislation is before the House, we've got hung power, there is a possibility to get that through. That'll be the first baby step to do something about this. It's past time that the communities talk about this stuff. They are such harmful, damaging machines to the economy and our community that they have to be rolled back. I just think that what we need to do is everybody get together. We've got today here the seeds of a local movement again, and then nationally there's the Stop the Loss Coalition. As I said before, there's been a lot of agency groups working to support victims of gambling, but there hasn't, mainly pokies. but there hasn't been a strong social movement like, you know, where people have stood up for their state against logging, for example, with the forestry issues, with the pulp mill and so forth. We need to develop a campaign where people are out there in the streets saying this has got to end. It's not good enough. We've got to put pressure on political parties to stop them taking political donations. That's part of the problem of the, you know, the Tasmanian political process, is that we have political parties that fund their campaigns from donors, the beneficiaries of legislation that subsequently goes through the House. Why do you think you had the fast-track pulp mill approval? Why do you think the paper deal was rolled out, you know, as a monopoly given free to one single company? Why in 2003? Without going to the election in 2002, did David Drew bring legislation before the House to grant another 15-year monopoly to a single company that already held the monopoly and never paid for it, 5 years before the deed was about to due to expire, and 5 years before a more enlightened Parliament in 2008, at least would have had the opportunity to debate whether in fact it was appropriate to have pokies in the community and who controlled them. We need to break that linkage between legislative outcomes and political donation. There needs to be public funding for political parties that's absolutely transparent, that puts a limit on it so that people can stand, so there's no impediment to anybody standing for Parliament or any political party taking an advantage by taking money out of big, you know, out of big business. And until we, you know, protect our democracy, we're going to continue to see these sorts of blights and the cancer on our society that we see as a result of voting machines here today. I mean, can you imagine ever being able to bring into Parliament legislation that would allow or provide protection for somebody to hypnotise them when they went out for a meal and take all their money off them and watch their family collapse, you know, watch their partner suicide or send them off to embezzle from their business? I mean, the wreckage of these things is just extraordinary. And, you know, as I said, I think it's way past time that we stood up as a community, we formed a solid movement that was a tribe, you know, right across politics and absentia of any particular political party, that united all of the people, all of those families who've suffered as a result of that, and the whole community to say enough's enough and change the law.
But how do you change it, Kimberth? I've talked to so many politicians in the major parties, and the first thing they say is, oh, old ladies love going down and putting $20 through the pokies, and it's their form of entertainment. I've had that come back to me so many times. How do you change that?
Start listening to the people.
Yeah, well, I mean, Stephen's obviously got a response there, start listening to people. The reality is, if you look at all of the polls, there's, you know, consistently around the 80% of the community who are polled say they don't want, you know, they want changes to poker machine access. It's pretty clear. I mean, those, you know, those sorts of really glib responses that you get.
But you do get them, don't you?
Yeah, you do. I've had the same thing, and I've seen the Premier of the state, when confronted with the same issues that Stephen's articulated today, seen the same evidence of families, you know, losing, you know, having the entire food removed from the table. They stood up there when you've said to the Premier, well, what are you going to do about it? The response is, well, we're not prepared to break an agreement with federal hotels and expose this, you know, state to sovereign risk as though suddenly there'd be a flight of capital out of the country if Parliament decided to do the right thing by the community. So I just think you've got to ignore those sorts of comments, and we need to have a community that does provide, you know, if that's the case, if little old ladies, it's the only thing they can do is go down to the park and have their wallets ripped off, then I'm afraid we've got to provide better entertainment for them.
That was first hand up, yes. Oh, good, we use the mic too, I like that.
I fully support what has been said in relation to harm minimisation, in relation to legislative reform, and in relation to bringing people's stories forward. I think a multi-pronged approach is definitely needed, staged and calculated and collective to protect the people who feel ashamed about the effects. I wanted to also say that state governments are addicted to the revenue. Politicians are elected because they get money from the organisations who profit from these losses. And the other side of the balance sheet is never seen really. It's never calculated in economic terms. No one's doing that equation. The cost to our health system, the cost to our human services in terms of child protection issues and young people becoming involved in the youth justice settings and graduating into the prison systems. These are all impacts that are real impacts as a result of electronic gaming machines in particular. And I know that sounds like pretty far out, right? But I can talk to you from experience. And I work for the government now, but personally, I've had experience across 2 jurisdictions that I won't go into now because I don't think it's going to add value, but I think a multi-pronged approach is needed. I think we need to get collective, get smart, look at opportunities such as the referral of powers in relation to gambling. If you, Andrew, you spoke about the Commonwealth for the first time intervening in these matters because these are state matters. I'd like to hear how you think, you know, you're going to be able to wrestle the revenue from the hands of the states, you know, around this, and perhaps that maybe one way we could look at bringing, you know, the control, you know, into a different kind of federal hands, if you like, but to sort of, I guess there's such those organisations who make money from gaming revenue are so ensconced within our community. They're high-profile people. They have high-profile interests, and they need to be showing some corporate social responsibility.
Thanks very much. Do you guys want to say something in response to that, or happy for another question?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think they were very good points well made, and you know, I suppose I can only reinforce again what I made before, that look out the window. Out that window, there's a whole lot of Tasmanians at the moment losing over $600,000 today. Over $600,000 will be ripped out of families' wallets today, and tomorrow another 600, another 600 after that. That's 1 or 2 houses every day that are just ripped out of the system, going straight into the pockets of the Pokies barons. A majority of them, that's where it ends up. So we've got to do something about it, you know. And by the same token, if you walked out there and you saw someone mugging someone and ripping off their wallet, that person would be pursued and go to jail. If it was a teenager, you know, robbing someone because their father or mother had spent all the family money, they'd go to jail. But the Pokies barons don't go to jail. They're actually protected by the law, and that's something that we must change.
Stephen?
I was just going to say, the decision to allow poker machines into Tasmania, I say this unequivocally, and it's my opinion, makes the state government or any government over time and the federal group directly responsible for the death of those people who have taken their own lives because of gambling, because of poker machines. It makes them responsible for the children that starve. It makes them responsible for every other ill that comes because of this problem. They do. They have to be told. You know, they just, it's so hard to get through. But I think we will find a way of beating that into it.
The cost to the community has in fact been quantified, and just in recent months, the state government has received its most recent social and economic impact study into problem gambling in Tasmania, and it has found that the cost to the community of poker machine problem gambling is about twice the taxation revenue collected. So it has been quantified. So any state government with any nous who thinks strategically and they need to think beyond the next budget and the next election, they would see actually a substantial saving if they implemented poker machine reforms, even if it meant a short-term reduction in their taxation revenue. As far as the legislative issues you've touched on, the Commonwealth has a number of powers to intervene. The corporation's power, the taxation power, communications regulations for networks, there's all sorts of powers that it has. One of the interesting issues that's come up in the committee is the fact that poker machine venues aren't required to show to exercise a duty of care for patrons on poker machines. And I think there is a compelling argument for legislative reform that puts the onus on venues when it comes to the care of their patrons playing the poker machines, and that you should be able to sue a venue that doesn't show appropriate duty of care. Interestingly, we had one witness in front of the committee just a few weeks ago who gave very absolutely compelling evidence. She named in the committee the 3 venues she frequented for 14 years of the period of her gambling problem, and she said not once in any of the 3 venues in 14 years did anyone walk up to her and tap her on the shoulder and said, "Hey, have you thought of going home?" Well, there is an example of where those 3 venues should be hauled before a judge, and there should be a law of the land that says you did not care for your patrons and you are responsible for her financial and physical losses.
But it would be if it was a drunk driver. There was just a recent case in relation to a venue serving irresponsibly the alcohol. Surely we could, iron that out.
I agree, but bizarrely in this country there is no legal obligation on the venues to care for the poker machine players.
Another question down here? Yep. Sorry, not very good point.
I just wanted to continue on from that point. My name's Emma Anglesey, and I just had a question to the panel. I guess the way I see it, in this day and age, there's very little tolerance, from my perspective, as a consumer for organisations and companies that support this type of practice. It's an example where governments and companies are putting their profits before people, and this is a question to the panel and to the room and people that have been involved in this campaign. Is there any corporate social responsibility and market vulnerabilities when it comes to these companies? Are there some companies that can be named and shamed and others that are performing well, or organisations that you can actually, that can stand up and say, I don't have Pokies in my venue because of this reason, and can you actually, could we actually, I guess, I'm sick of waiting for the government to take action. Could we actually put the responsibility back on the organisations and attack them from a corporate and a market perspective? I'm just interested to hear from anyone what they think of that idea, and have they tried it, and do they think it's feasible, and what the barriers might be?
Kim Booth, first up.
Yeah, I'll just respond quickly to that, Emma. And look, the point about the whole gambling industry is that it's controlled by a very narrow field of pokey barons, such as a Packer family, a Farrell family, and big unions as well. And Woolworths. And Woolworths, yes. And so, at least at that level, there's definitely an opportunity to campaign against the Woolworths. They would suffer significant brand damage, and I'm hoping that might come out as a result. It's one of the things that will come out, no doubt, of the anti-pokey coalition that's been sort of mooted today. So there is opportunities with them, but in regard to the Farrells, their business model they don't depend on anything other than pokies for their major part of their cash inflow, so they don't really care. They're not exposing themselves to risk. What are you going to do, go and boycott a pokey venue? Well, we already know they're there and they're set up to entice victims in and take their wallets. So I'm not sure that you can do much corporate damage as you can, brand damage with, like for example with the forest industries, people who, take timber out of an area that ought not be logged can suffer significant brand damage, as we've seen with Taiwan, for example. I don't think you can connect that with, certainly not with Federals, but Woolworths for sure.
And, oh, sorry, I was just going to say, Andrew Wilkie, I guess you're going to say the best brand damage can be done at the ballot box. You said before we should be focusing on the lawmakers and not individuals.
That's exactly right. You know, both politicians and parties and candidates who have a strong position on this. Just one issue. I need to be a little bit cagey about this because it's a rather sensitive issue. But I can say that certainly Wesfarmers, who own Coles, are under quite a bit of pressure to implement harm minimisation measures in the pubs it owns. And I don't think it's lost on Wesfarmers that would put a lot of pressure on Woolworths to follow suit.
Helen Burnet.
I think there are pubs out there which I certainly support because they don't have pokies, and I think that's an opportunity to support those fantastic pubs like the Republic, who when the opportunity came to have pokies in their pubs, they said absolutely not. So it's you know, supporting those, but equally I think we should be getting into the other pubs which do have pokies, and they're not the most noble of pubs in our municipality, unfortunately. But I think we should be in there and saying, well, hang on a moment, is this really what we want to see in our suburbs? So let's put some pressure on them as well to make them think about changing.
Stephen, anything to add? Another question then?
Could I respond to something Keith Burgess said, please?
Go for it.
Michael Swanson, my name is. I'm the 47th National Secretary of a brand new union called the Association of Australian Workers. And can I say publicly that this union sees no use in the promotion of poker machines anywhere in Australia. And having said that, the service industry is the most sustainable future growth for jobs. Let's not kid ourselves there. And every pun intended, on the other side of the coin, you'll hear the mantra of jobs continually being trotted out by clubs and the poker venues. They will continually say to you that if they lose the revenue, they're going to lose jobs. So there's no evidence whatever of that. And having made the statement that I've just made, I will publicly make a commitment from the union as the Association of Australian Workers that we see no merit whatever in terms of jobs, and we would give a commitment that we would like to see no poker machines in any venue in Australia.
Yeah, I guess my question is, I mean, this is quite a unique campaign to my mind. There's 80% of public support already openly out there against pokies. What other campaign, like for our politicians up on stage, have they had like this? And what's the potential win that we can have from this, given that it is already such a swelling of public support to get rid of pokies or at least minimise their harm? So I guess I'd just like to get any feedback you've had on similar type campaigns with already that support base, and what's the potential for a win in Tasmania, I guess, just to focus in.
Helen's given me the microphone while she thinks about an answer. Look, that's a good question. I think the biggest achievement we'll get out of this, I suppose, is that the community will empower itself. I mean, it is something that the politics, you know, the political parties thus far in Parliament has failed the electorate, because, as you say, there's 80% of the population already behind some change, but we can't, you know, in the Greens, there's 5 people in Parliament out of 25 can't get support from both of the other parties representing 20 out of 25. Andrew, at this stage, is struggling to get support, and only because he's got the leverage of a hung federal parliament to be able to, you know, effectively force Labor at this stage to do whatever it is they end up doing. You know, they're backing down as fast as they can, and the minute you you know, the minute the political situation changes and Andrew loses his power, then he's, you know, there'll be no capacity to make any changes in the way he's doing. So, you know, I guess you asked also about what other campaigns there have been. Well, there was a campaign over the Vietnam War, which is something that I can remember well. There was a huge, massive marching in the streets with regard to the Vietnam War, finally, that forced the government to change its mind. In the same way, I think the campaigns to protect native forests and anti-wood chipping and anti-pulp mill campaigns have been very successful, not yet at a political level to stop it at a parliamentary level, but it's certainly scared off investors, and you know, it's had that effect that everyone's talking about at the corporate level. So I think, you know, I'd have to agree that there is the ingredients here of a fantastically successful campaign. It's a window of opportunity that's there, particularly at the moment, because there is a lot of stuff happening both nationally and at state level with our $1 bet limit legislation. The stuff that Helen wants to put up to have a legislation to bring power back to local government to make decisions. And I think there can be some great changes, but it will require a large body of people to finally stand up. You know, that 80% who say they want change are going to have to come out of the woodwork, and it's going to have to make it a more vote turnout for them as well, so that both Labor and Liberal, in this case, in this state, can look at it, read the polls, feel the breeze, and change the legislation.
Yes, well, thanks for being a filler for me, Kim. But I think they're winning because we're not organised as yet. We do have good work at the federal and state levels. At the local government, unfortunately, we still need to do a lot more to represent our communities, and that's what we need to do.
Just while the microphone's going past, I'd say that it's absolutely critical to achieve that we do actually have a grassroots community movement that's right across the political spectrum. Like the 80% of the people need to come out and stand up for this.
A good vehicle for reform is it's called the Stop the Loss Coalition. I think you'll find it at stoptheloss.org. It's a national collection, or national group. It brings together all of the churches, Get Up, and other organisations. Between them, it represents millions of Australians. So if you're after some sort of campaign to get behind, they're a good mob. I think it's certainly good that, you know, united we have a stronger and more powerful voice. Otherwise, they kick us off little groups at a time. So Stop the Loss is certainly the group that I'm very supportive of.
Stephen, do you feel more confident that something significant is going to change than you did 5 years ago, sir?
I didn't think about it 5 years ago. I was an addict, so...
When this process for you started, I guess, do you feel more confident now? Is there a groundswell of support?
Yes, yeah, I do. I'm really inspired by the EPIC group in Castlemaine, Victoria, for all the right reasons, and a lot of them aren't financial. They have refused to give in their fight when an obstruction has come that seemed insurmountable. They refused to give in, appeal. And I, right through time over sending letters to the Mercury and everything, I've always urged Tasmania, get together, come together. We can lead the way with this sort of thing. And, you know, Castlemaine overtook us, so, you know, let's come in second or something. But I just think of 4 words, really, about to do with this whole subject, and that's probably more people than not. That's what Kim just said. If there's more people than not speaking, they'll listen. If there's more people than not putting their efforts into it, things will happen, you know. It really is about people to come together. Otherwise, it's just a subject to toss around. Indeed, you know, feel good about it.
And while you've got the mic, while you've got the mic, you wanted to say thank you?
Yeah, I'd like to thank everyone that come here tonight, and it's a very difficult subject to become a part of. It seems very peripheral, but it's not. We know that, and it's becoming bigger. And I really want to thank Helen for she's the brainchild of this, and for Amy for putting in so much work. Everyone has inspired me to give more of my effort, and I hope that we do come together and make some action happen.
Two quick ones, Alex. Firstly, some friendly counsel for the Greens. I would hope that the Greens be very cautious about whether or not it supports the government's watered down reforms in the Senate. It's watered down, not very good, but I do judge it's better than nothing, and it will. It's a small step, but it's also that important precedent of the federal parliament for the very first time becoming involved in a legislative way in poker machine regulation in the country. So it's all well and good to occupy the moral high ground, but I think if we don't salvage something out of this parliament, it may be an awful long time before we get the next opportunity. I've been asked to read out a poem by Kim Burke. Where's Kim? Put your hand up, Kim.
Your poem.
No, there we go. No more the Pokies I'll play. Excuse me if I don't do this very well. No more the Pokies I'll play. No more they'll get my money on pension day. No more I put the coins in the slot. I'll keep that. I'll keep what I've got. Now I'm happy and every day because the Pokies I don't play.
Thanks, Andrew. And thank you, Kelvin. I'm very proud to have a namesake with the name Booth, but it's actually Kelvin Booth, not Kim Booth. That's me, Andrew. And I'm not a poet either. I won't be able to match that. That's really, really good. Thank you.
Your poetry has more swear words in it, I think.
That's right. Yeah, look, I'd like to thank Kelvin for those words, and particularly Steve and everybody for coming on tonight, but also Andrew as well for coming on and sharing the stage with Helen to try and join together and do something about this blight on our society. I think we know the facts. We just need to have the determination to do something about it, the courage to stand up like Steve and Sharp tonight, and I'm sure that we will win.
Look, I'd like to finish, and apart from the thanks that's already gone around, and thank you to Alex for his time tonight, but there were people who couldn't make it tonight. There's a man from the northwest who sent me a letter. He's suffered from Pokies addiction, and I think it's only right that I read this out. It might be a good point on which to finish. His name is Andreas Worth. He has spoken out publicly, and hopefully he and Steve and Kelvin with his poetry might provide the opportunity for people with Pokies addiction or people who have suffered as a result of Pokies addiction because of members of their family have the capacity to speak out. So here's from Andreas Worth. Today and for several years now, I'm gamble free. I don't bet on anything for any prize or any reason. Gambling almost killed me, and I'm very lucky to have survived that ride through hell. A few years ago, I was addicted to heavy gambling as a result of taking medication for people living with Parkinson's, like I am. This matter is presently before the courts, and therefore I cannot get into further details, but I can say this. Gambling, and in particular playing the Pokies, has never ended in an overall win. After several years of heavy gambling on a daily basis, I can now say each win turned out to be a hidden loss too. A rare winning streak got reinvested into other machines to cover precious losses, and before long that money is gone too. A typical win causes poker machines to flash lights accompanied by a catchy tune to make sure everything at the venue knows about your win, even a small win. What I didn't realise was my win was nothing more than ammunition for the next hour gambling. Pokey venues are on just about every second street corner. I used to mainly play the dollar machines or high stakes on 20-cent machines, both with the same outcome. I lost a small fortune, my business, my house, everything I ever worked for. gone are good friends, my self-respect and at times the will to live. It went on night after night, day after day. Frustrated, angry, lonely because nobody will understand such a destructive habit. Again, pockets are empty, credit cards maxed out, no food at home, unpaid bills piling up, friends stop ringing or calling by. Late at night, I'm in my car near a gambling venue, crying my eyes out about this hopeless situation. I am fully aware that what I am doing here is systematically destroying my life, yet I cannot stop doing it. Self-exclusion from nearby venues, don't doubt the strong urge to play the Pokies. I just drive a bit further to the next one. If you play, you pay, and some pay more than others.
Thanks very much. Big round of applause for all our panellists tonight. As a journalist, I prefer to sit on the fence on most things, but I think this is, I agree with much of what's been said tonight. Some parts I don't agree with, but I think it's a conversation that Australians should keep having, keep investigating. Anyway, thanks very much.